If you haven't been to any national parks recently, now's the time to do it. But obviously, the sun's starting to come out almost everywhere, and so there's an opportunity to be able to see some natural wonders throughout the world. But from where I'm from in California, I used to live near Yosemite, and one of the big problems about Yosemite is tourists, and that one of the interesting things is it has these massive rock monoliths, these really high mountains and granite sculptures of nature all throughout it. And there'll be the area that you can look at, there'll be a railing, and then there's usually just a little bit more of a lip towards the edge, and then a precipitous drop, like 10,000 feet. You fall so far that you'll be falling and be able to think about how long it's been that you've been falling before it kills you. And all over those parks now, there's the railing, and then there will be a placard on the other side of it, usually with text and an image. And it'll say stay on the trail, or it'll say stay behind the railing, because, and it'll show an image that was taken from a camera off of a body of someone who fell to their death trying to get the shot, trying to get just a little bit better of a photo. And I don't know why. Maybe it's because they're just a tourist or trying to take advantage of the one time they'll be here in the US, or that they'll be here in California or whatever. Or maybe as some professional photographer trying to sell a calendar. I don't know. I don't know who it was. I don't know what their intentions were. What I do know is that that photograph ended up costing that person and their loved ones far more than they ever thought was possible. That I'm sure the placard was probably already there with the statement. Like, the railing clearly wasn't clear enough for them, so the placard was there, and they ignored that because, you know what? That's for other people. I'm really careful. I'm far more graceful than a lot of people. No big deal. I have good balance. I have a good sense of where my body is. I'll be able to get this shot and be able to move on. No big deal. And it killed him. And we do this all of the time in life. The reason the railing was there was because people couldn't see clearly enough of that there's a precipice. The reason the placard was there is that for some reason people seem to think that railings and guidelines only apply to other people that are inferior to them in some ways. And the placard wasn't clear enough, and so now the image is there, harvested from the body of a dead person who ignored all of those other countermeasures and simple sensory input. And yet we still don't learn. It's estimated that thousands of people will fall to their deaths from similar heights all over the world because the railing and the environment and the placard and the photo just isn't clear enough to get the message across that people are in danger. And this is why when people tell me that they would believe, as an atheist, they would believe in God if God would just make it more explicit to them, if it was just irrefutably clear. I see circumstances, events like that, which are routine. Thousands of people every year are going to fall to their death in that fashion without regard for the guardrail and the placard and the photo. It couldn't be any clearer, but for some reason we think we're an exception. Every single person thinks this, that they think they're the exception. I grew up in California, again, that everyone sees the red octagonal signs, but in California, very few think that it applies to them. It's called a California stop. You just roll through slowly, and if no one's there, you just keep on going. It's so common, it's named after them. Everyone sees the white rectangular speed limit signs on the highway, and no one thinks that it applies to them. In fact, here where I live now, near Indianapolis, all of the speed limits are 55. And if you're going 55 on any of those speed limits, you're going to get flattened because everyone's going 75. And of course, coming from California, 65 is basically unheard of. We're talking 70s, 80s, 90s if you're on 99 or I-5. Nobody thinks that those things apply to them. But law enforcement, however, is thorough in its belief that it does apply. And the thing about it is, there is a divine law enforcer as well. A judge who is going to hold everyone accountable for their behavior and their regard for the guardrails and the placards and the images that have been put in place to keep them away from the cliff's edge of sin. But most of us still are convinced it's for someone else. That I can date around, I can be promiscuous, I can shack up, I can do whatever I want, and it's not going to affect me. Someone else is going to have to pay the price because they're worse than I am, or something. Fate's going to get them, karma. We attribute all these sorts of things to try and excuse our behavior and condemn others. And God, who is the only righteous judge, will view each one of our accounts individually in the light of two things. Were you pure, holy, and since none of us are, did you put your trust in Christ? And if the answer to that question is no, then the fruit of your work will harvest itself in your destruction.